I put out another poll and asked my followers on LinkedIn how they defined work-life balance. I gave 3 options. 1, balance. You're joking, right? 10% of you agreed with this one. The second option was work and life in perfect sync. 35% of you felt that this was how this term is defined. And finally, work to live, not live to work. 55% of you agreed with this statement. So who's right and who's wrong? Well, you know the drill. Let's talk about it. Welcome to this week's episode of It's Monday. What's Jonathan thinking? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of It's Monday. What's Jonathan thinking? This week, I decided to really hone my spare thought cycles on the topic of work and life balance. Don't tell anyone, but I had a rather free day on Wednesday, and it gave me some time to do some research on this topic of the balance we try to achieve between work and life. This topic is problematic if you are trying to find the one concise opinion on how these concepts, this equilibrium between the demands of our work lives and the demands of our personal lives, on how these concepts are and can be defined, and maybe more importantly, how they can be attained. But it turns out it's really not that easy. If you do a Google search, for example, on this topic, you'll find literally pages and pages of blogs, videos, articles from major periodicals and other publications. Clearly, thousands of authors have offered their take on how we achieve work-life balance, each one a slightly different take from the other. One thing is for certain, this topic is very good for business if you are a life coach. There seems to be plenty of consulting available for those who feel they hold some keys to achieving wholeness in life. But the reality is that attaining a state of exact balance between professional and personal life is both not linear and is highly subjective. What feels like balance to one person may feel completely unbalanced to somebody else. Moreover, I find myself aligning with Michael Walters of Studio 503 in Minnesota, who in his TED Talk offered that the notion of work-life balance is a fallacy. We cannot ever really fully separate work from life or life from work. Rather, he said that such concepts are choices that we make multiple times throughout the day. The other day, one of my employees let my team know that she was on her way to the doctor because her son woke up with an inflammation in his eye. Odds are that in those moments, she was hardly thinking about work. But when she returned from the doctor's office, got her son all situated, she returned to work. Maybe it wasn't a full productive day, but as I've watched her, she lets the time she can focus matter and achieves her own level of productivity. Her definition of balance is not mine and neither mine hers, and that's okay. Just like in this allegory, we are constantly making such choices throughout the day. For example, when you lose your job, where does the bulk of your focus shift? Right, getting a new job. If you're thinking about life, it's more in the context of worrying about how you will live if you can't find work. Family can come after you feel better about your return to work strategy. Conversely, what happens when you get a call from your life partner letting you know that one of the kids is sick? Well, your focus has now shifted to your children, and odds are work is the furthest thing from your mind. Or your client calls and needs something from you, quote unquote, as soon as you can. Well, guess what you're thinking about? Work. Life coach Sarah Cameron offered in her TED Talk that often what is missing is not the balance of life and work, but the presence of the white space in between. What we lack, what we seek maybe, is the time to think about neither life nor work. This is the time you maybe spend working out or reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching It's Monday, What's Jonathan Thinking? Could happen. Anyway, these are the times when you are able to focus on nothing. This, I think, is the biggest challenge we have in our lives today. And it's likely the lack of white space that mostly makes up for why we feel out of balance. Because it's in these white space moments that our brains are able to process, to synthesize, to churn on a particular problem. I recall a mentor of mine who spends quality time with his partner every weekend by hiking. But he makes a point in each hike to have a problem to try and solve during that hike. To put it in the words of Professor Cal Newport, This is his deep work time. Turning back to Sarah Cameron, she posits that when we feel unbalanced, it's likely because work and life are occupying so much time that the white space is just unattainable. It becomes deprioritized. Dr. Newport very much agreed with this notion in his book, Deep Work, where he offered that our lives are so regimented and automated that achieving a deep state of focus is nearly impossible. We are so constantly receiving emails and phone calls and are being inundated with meetings that likely could have been an email and unscheduled walk-ups that we never actually get enough time to deeply focus on one single thing. To bring these two contributors together, we are constantly context switching between life and work so much that it is hard to find time to extract ourselves from both long enough to gain a perspective, to just think. In my last one-on-one with my boss, he pushed me by saying, "I'm still waiting to see what happens when you dream." I think that was a cue from my boss that it's time for me to dream before he makes it a directive. Or maybe he already has. Anyway, so what are we to do? What is the answer to this seemingly intractable quandary of achieving balance between life and work? Well, looping back to Michael Walters, he kind of advises us to stop seeking it. Don't look for balance. Look for progress. Look for the realization that work and life are inseparable constructs. They are not two buckets, but are in fact one bucket that we are constantly pulling from. And life is simply doing the best with whichever ball you happen to have picked up in the moment. What's this one? Medical emergency. Okay, well, there goes work for the day. Wait, where's this one? Employee just resigned. Oh, definitely not thinking about life. Client from the same team the employee just resigned from needs something right away. Definitely not thinking about life. And so on, and so on, and so on throughout our day. Mr. Walters offers this. The first step we need to take is to accept that these things, work, life, and I would add white space, are all interconnected. The more we allow ourselves to see them as one bucket, not three, is the more we can accept that we are constantly making choices, and that is life. Next, we need to give ourselves some grace. Some days are going to feel more balanced than others, and that just has to be okay. And third, awareness. We need to commit ourselves to observing the choices we make every day. And we need to be honest with ourselves about those choices. The danger we face when we lack awareness is that we might not catch the reason that we are prioritizing work over life or life over work. Or throw both life and work to the wind so we can have some white space. Maybe we are not receiving from a relationship in our personal life exactly what we need. So maybe we're prioritizing work over life because what is happening in our personal life is not fulfilling us. You've heard me talk at times about the grief I felt when my mom passed away. It was so emotional. It was so huge. What do? I booked cantorial soloist gigs. I plowed myself into work here at CG Infinity. I did everything I could to not deal with this big giant ball of grief that was staring at me square in the eyes. To give a converse example, maybe something at work has become so toxic, so we find ourselves prioritizing life because we receive more affirmation from it. It's not balance that we need. It's awareness to why we are making the choices we make. It's in that awareness that you can realize, oh, you know what, I really need to deal with what's going on in that relationship, or I really do need to deal with that grief. Or man, you know what, this work environment is really affecting me and I need to do something about it because it's affecting my personal life. Fourth is momentum. Just like in our agile development practices, we don't try to boil the whole ocean, but rather break the project down into achievable chunks and measurable sprints. We need to do the same in our lives. When we do this, we can revel in the baby steps, build upon the small, quick wins, and finally see ourselves moving forward. And last is empowerment. First, we need to allow ourselves the grace to not be perfect. Give yourself the power to be a sprint, a short iteration in which you are learning and growing and finding a way to move forward in an incremental fashion. and empower yourself to live life on purpose. You don't know what today will bring, so all you can bring is your mindset. Know that it doesn't matter what step you take. What matters is that you take a step. Pick one thing in your life and move it forward. Pick up another proverbial ball from that bucket and move that forward. And again and again. What are you doing? You're creating positive momentum. You're increasing your awareness of yourself and the world around you. You're empowering yourself to make mistakes and learn from them and incorporate those into your actions when you pick up the next ball. And before you know it, you've created positive momentum. You are giving yourself grace when one ball keeps coming up out of that bucket more than the other kind. And you're no longer thinking about balance. You're not thinking about which bucket, life or work or white space, has more of your attention. You're grabbing from a single bucket and consciously making a choice in that moment. It's not about balance. It's about progress. And that, my friends, is a life well lived. It's always a pleasure to be with you wherever you are in your morning or throughout your day. Make it a great week. Make it a week where you create that awareness of where your focus is. Keep stock of which ball you picked up from that bucket. May you recognize that no one is expecting you to be an expert at juggling everything. May you give yourself the grace to focus on progress more than you focus on balance. And may you be filled with the synthesized thoughts that only happen in the white space. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning, and I'll see you next time on It's Monday. What's Jonathan Thinking?